This Shabbat, the air feels fragile. Almost 2 years, at least on the Jewish calendar, almost 2 years since that terrible morning of Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, we again find ourselves between anguish and hope, hearing that perhaps even this weekend, today, tomorrow, Monday, the remaining hostages may come home. The very thought of it takes our breath away. We are relieved and trembling. On the first day of Sukkot, Rabbi Friar Bodson spoke about Sukkot and the anniversary of October 7th, how our people still live in a spiritual sukkah, vulnerable, open to the elements, unsure of what tomorrow will bring. She spoke about remembrance, how grief remains raw, how trauma echoes through the generations. Today I want to build upon her words and take a different step forward. If her sermon was about remembering, mine is about reclaiming. Reclaiming faith, joy, and moral courage, not after fragility, but within it. Because our tradition teaches that joy and sorrow are never opposites. They are neighbors in the same sukkah. To understand this moment, we have to begin with the strange command of the Torah, Basukkah teshvu shivat yamim. In a sukkah you should dwell for 7 days. The sukkah is intentionally fragile, a roof that leaks, walls that sway. And yet, the Torah calls this time Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. Why anchor joy in a dwelling that can fall apart at any moment? Because our tradition insists that joy is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to dwell in it. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, wrote, "The sukkah is the home we build to remind ourselves that all homes are fragile. It is not fear that makes us holy, but awareness. We sanctify fragility by truthfully living within it." For nearly 2 years, the families of the hostages have lived in a spiritual sukkah. Their walls made of hope, their roofs made of prayer. Every gust of rumor shakes those walls. Every delay pierces the heart. And yet, they keep dwelling. They have taught us what the prophet Habakkuk meant when he said, "V'tzadik be'emunato yichya." The righteous shall live in their faith. Faith not as certainty, but as persistence. Faith as showing up when you'd rather shut down. Faith as breathing through the long night, waiting for dawn. And we, all of us, have lived within that sukkah with them. We have worn yellow ribbons on our clothing. We have worn dog tags over our hearts. And we have prayed Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael every day, each Shabbat, each Chag, with tears in our eyes. We have stood at rallies and vigils, lit candles, sent supplies, and those of us who have been able to travel to Israel, we stood with the families of the hostages in Hostage Square to see their faces, to say their names. We have carried their stories in our Torah processions, in our sermons, our dreams. Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, we are all the house of Israel. Their fragility became our calling, their waiting our witness. Their faith became our mirror. 2 years have taught us much. The writer Bret Stephens called October 7th a moral earthquake, a moment when illusions fell away, the illusion that evil could be reasoned with, that safety could be guaranteed, that the world would always understand our pain. He wrote that the challenge before Israel and before all of us is to face evil with moral clarity and moral courage, without losing compassion for our own humanity. That tension between conviction and compassion is the very heart of Jewish belief, the very heart of Emunah, of faith. It is what the Torah means when it commands, Chizku v'imtzu al tir'u, be strong and resolute, v'al ta'artzu mipnehem, and do not be afraid or terrified from them. Strength, says Torah, is not the absence of fear, it's the refusal to surrender to it. To live with courage amid fragility, that is the truest form of Emunah. And yet courage without humility can harden into pride. The sukkah reminds us that even our strength must remain transparent. We have learned how thin our walls truly are, as a people, as a nation, as human beings. Technology and might cannot shield us from tragedy or from moral responsibility. And yet humility is not despair, it is the soil of emunah, of faith. V'tzadik be'emunato yichyeh, the righteous live by their faith. And to live by faith is to walk without full understanding, but with a full heart. The psalmist sings, as we pronounced in Hallel this morning, Zeh hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismecha bo. This is the day God has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. He wrote that while surrounded by enemies, not in peace. Joy then is not naivete. It is resistance, the refusal to let despair be the final word. If hostages come home this Shabbat or tomorrow or Monday, we will rejoice through tears. If not yet, we will continue to sing Shalom Aleichem and still bless our children, still kindle light amid the darkness. Joy in a fragile world is faith's most defiant song. And yet this Shabbat, that song will sound different across Israel. Some families will sing through tears of reunion, finally embracing those who have returned from the valley of death. Others will weep over the graves of those whose bodies are only now coming home. The same air will hold the sound of both relief and mourning, tears of happiness mingling with tears of sorrow. For those who will bury their loved ones, may the earth receive them with tenderness. For those who return alive, may healing come gently, step by step, breath by breath. They too carry scars unseen, scars that time and love must tend. The road to recovery will be long, but it is paved with the prayers of a people who will not look away. This Shabbat, the air feels fragile. We can almost hear the trembling between joy and grief, between what is lost and what may yet be restored. And still, we dwell. We build sukkot, we sing. Because even when our hearts are divided between anguish and hope, faith commands us to live, to love, to rebuild. The sukkah's roof is never sealed. It must be open enough to see the stars, to let a little rain in, to remind us that holiness is not something we build overhead, but something that descends when we open ourselves. Avraham stood beneath the same open sky when he said, Hineni, here I am. He didn't know what would come next. He simply stood, present and vulnerable before God. That is Emunah, not certainty but presence, not answers but openness. To live in the sukkah is to practice that kind of faith, to sit beneath an open roof and say, Hineni, I am still here. To pray even when the wind stings, to keep showing up for God, for others, and for hope. To trust that the same stars shining on us today shine also on those still waiting to come home. Every fragile moment is an invitation to act, to build, to comfort, to heal. The sukkah falls so its lessons can rise, to open our doors, to welcome others, to sanctify community. So the question that we must ask ourselves this Shabbat is not only what will happen, it is who will we become? Will we let fear narrow our hearts or widen them? Will we live by control or compassion, by power or by purpose? Every Shabbat and Yom Tov we recite as part of Birkat Hamazon, the psalmist's dream of this moment. Shir Hamalot b'shuv Adonai et shivat Zion hayinu kecholmim. When God restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like dreamers. And then, Hazorim bedima berina yiksoru. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. Our tears are not wasted. They are the seeds of courage, compassion, and renewal. If we plant them in Emunah, if we plant them in faith, they will bloom into hope. And so I want to conclude, therefore, with a prayer of Emunah, a prayer of faith. Ribono shel olam, on this Shabbat in which we so eagerly await the return of our hostages, living and murdered, we know that you who dwell within every troubling heart, be with those who wait, who ache, who pray. If this Shabbat brings release, let it bring wholeness. If it brings delay, let it not bring despair. Strengthen the captives and their families. Bless all who labor for their freedom. Remember those who wear yellow ribbons and dog tags, who gather in squares and sanctuaries, who will not stop saying, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael. Help us dwell with them in faith and in love. Teach us to live by Emunah, by faith, to find joy not beyond fragility, but through it. And let us say, Amen.